what we do is we break the whole day up in our whole strategy up into a matrix, a two-dimensional problem. And it's actually more than 2 dimensions, but we'll start with the 2 dimensions. And the 2 dimensions that we're dealing with is the time of day and where we are relative to the butterfly, right? So what you're seeing up here is the 1 dimension right here in this row. And then in this row right here, or this column, is our position to the fly. But here, this first one is the morning part of the session, the afternoon part of the session, and the closing part of the session. This here is not in profit. This here is in profit, but just outside the profit tent. And this one here is inside the profit tent. So let's take a look at what this positional stuff looks like. All right. So we have 1 dimension, which is time, right? Which is the morning session, the afternoon session, and then the closing session. The morning session is between 9:30 and noon, right? The afternoon session is from noon to 2:30, and the closing session is from 2:30 to 4. And the reason why we're splitting this up into 2 dimensions is so that we can split up this entire trade, this very complex movement of time and profit curves and position and all this other stuff, and resolve it down to a very simple matrix. And then we can decide within that matrix how we're going to act in each one of the particular areas. So for instance, we can choose how much of a trailing stop that we typically do when we're inside the profit tent and it's closing session, right? Or outside the profit tent and it's only the afternoon session, etc. So the other dimension is position, and that is the position relative to the fly. Now, the way we do this is we use the break-even points. We have the break-even point of the profit curves. Here's the profit curve. So here's one break-even point. And then we use the break-even point of the at expiration strategy. And we break this up into 3 segments. We call them zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. So that's what we had here in this matrix. We had zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. So now we'll know what to do. So the morning session, let's use nice sunshine yellow, is right here. The afternoon session, we start getting into blue skies, is right here. And then the closing session, let's get into darker skies, is right here. So why do we do that? Well, that's a recognition of the change that happens during the course of a day. Remember, I showed you the growing profit curve. It's changing, and that represents the amount of decay that's happening in our options. So we know that that decay is happening at a very slow rate in the morning, and then in the closing session, it's happening very quickly. Now, you've probably seen a chart like this. I'm going to do another chart that will explain all this, that shows what the average decay of an option looks like. So let's say that this chart here represents the life of an option. And let's say that this is when the option is created. Then back here is when the option is finally closed or is expired. Maybe E is the best word, right? If you were to look at the premium of that option, that premium starts way up here, And then over time, it's slowly coming down until it gets to the end and it just drops off like a rock off of a cliff. So if I were to break this up now in our weekly options, these are 8 days long, right? So that means that we have 7 periods that look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? This here is the 0 DTE day. There. Now, this may not be drawn to scale, and it's not. This curve really looks more like this. That would be more accurate. Right? So most of the premium is actually decaying in that very last. So this is very interesting. That's why we're so interested in the 0 DTE, because the amount of premium that is decaying in that period of time is really incredible. Compared to the entire 8 days, we have all of this. So the most premium is decaying in the shortest period of time. That's why we trade 0 DTE. Now, if I were to take that day, that 0 DTE day, and expand it, and then look at the premium decay over just that day, it would look very, very similar to the week. In fact, it's like a fractal of it. It would look just like that if we were to just expand the very last day, the 0 DTE day. So what we can see from this is that if we break down what this looks like in the course of a day into the morning session, afternoon session, and closing session, is a very definitive way that price is behaving, right? So this is the morning session, this is the afternoon session, and this is the closing session. So we can see that in the morning, premium is decaying very slow. It's kind of flat. And so from 9:30 to noon, there's not a whole lot to do in terms of premium decay. We don't have to worry about that as being a huge factor. The only thing that we really have to worry about is price going back and forth. In the afternoon session, you can see that it starts to dogleg. starts that push down, right? And so there is a different attitude that we have to have, because now we have accelerating premium and maybe price isn't moving quite as much. Maybe it's settling in during the mid part of the day from noon to 2:30. And then at the end of the day, it's falling off, going off the edge of a cliff. And that's from 2:30 to 4. We have to be much more diligent about our strategy when we get there. So if we're trying to make hold or fold decisions all along this timeline, the decisions that we make here versus here and here are going to be quite different based on this decay of premium. And so that's the challenge that we have with 0 DTE.